Good morning, San Diego. Good to have you here on another episode of The American Dream. Thank you for joining me. Of course, we're here every morning at 10:30 a.m. Channel 4. Also on 1170 a.m. KCBQ, The Craig Sewing Show. We take all of these clips from the shows and we upload them to craigsewing.com if you want to follow us and engage in the conversation. Today, we're going finance, financial information, mortgage, real estate. On the past shows, you've seen us with CEOs and charities and just cool stories, San Diego stories. But today, we're really going to drill down on some advice, and that leads us to the word on the American Dream. All right, speaking of market, man, the market is absolutely crushing it. Now we are comfortably over 18,000. And you know that old adage, buy low, sell high. Is this a good time to sell? And that's always so troubling when you let emotion get involved, because when things are going up and you have money in the market, that's a great thing. When they're going down, you want to sell. My advice to you is you don't chase stocks and you don't chase the market. Having a great plan doesn't matter what the market does. Here's what I want to focus on today. It's April, right? So if it's April, that means you're probably meeting with your CPA, your tax planner. That makes sense no matter what the market does to lower your tax liability. This is something we give a lot of advice on our radio show is unless you like giving this government as a $19 trillion debt, more money to spend inefficiently, currently maintaining a deficit, I would rather see that money in your hands. I'm a free market kind of guy. You work hard for that money. I'd like to see you lower your tax liability and spend the money. Help the economy that way. Invest, build a business, put it in your 401k, but don't pay more in taxes than you need to. Now, that doesn't mean do anything illegally, but have a great tax plan that's very different than a CPA. A CPA can shuffle some paperwork, tell if you're getting a refund or not. A tax plan is sitting down with an attorney, really mapping this out. And you also need to get asset protection. What if something was to happen to you? And not just what happens with your assets. In California, we had the Terry Schiavo case. You remember where the woman was in the wheelchair and there was an argument between her ex-husband and her parents on what we should do with her life and being on life support. An estate plan, tax plan, will, trust, all this works together. If you need advice on any of this stuff, I really encourage you to reach out to craigsewing.com. We could be happy to help you with that. But that's today's advice. Whether the market goes up or down, have a great tax plan and have asset protection no matter what the market does. That's good advice for you. All right, let's go ahead and bring in our first guest today, Matt Rinke. You hear him on my radio show. You see him here on The American Dream, coming in to give you some advice on this volatile marketplace. Mr. Rinke joins us now.
Hi, I'm Steve Madsen. My wife Debbie and I are the owners of this fabulous home in beautiful Coronado. We decided to put solar in the home because we wanted to have a smaller carbon footprint and we wanted to save some money. I'm a retired contractor and I've worked with Baker Electric in the past, so when I found out they had a solar division, I was ecstatic. They're a good company, got integrity, a good work ethic. I would definitely recommend Baker. My wife and I are extremely happy with what they've done for us.
And now joining us in studio, he is an expert on the market. We love having him on the show. Matt Rinke with Illumination Wealth. Good to have you on the show.
Good to be here, Craig. Thank you.
Sticking with my message today, I'm focusing on the things you can control. We also have Scott Finkbeiner, first time coming on the show with Wilkinson Finkbeiner, your family law attorney.
Yes.
So we'll talk a little bit about the market, money, and relationships as it all kind of comes together here. So market's doing pretty well. Above 18,000, seems to be doing all right.
Yeah, I mean, back towards those old highs. I guess a number of things are going on. Interest rates, the rising might be pushed back a little bit. Even globally, a lot of countries are actually printing money, and we're in the midst of earnings season. So some things are doing better than what people had anticipated from a couple months back.
It's always more fun when you're in here and the market's up.
Yeah.
When the market's down, it's depressing, right? So we celebrate that. Everybody's happy when the market's up. As long as it's not overheating or getting bubbly. But today we got to focus on more niche advice, and I promised our audience that's what we were going to be doing here today. So we bring in Scott, who is a family law practitioner. The number one cause of divorce is money, right? So you see this, I'm sure, all the time. So good to have you on the show as well.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
So Matt, help me out though. So you're actually giving a lot of advice. You said this is like one of the top 10 things that you're advising people on. So explain the relationship you have with Scott.
Yeah, well, Scott's just a premier family law attorney. He's helping people through difficult situations when it comes to divorce. And you see that oftentimes poor relationships with money lead to financial problems, and poor communication within couples about money lead to arguments, lead to marriage dissolutions and divorce. And so it's just one of those things that can be extremely costly emotionally and financially.
So you have to deal with it when it's in the implosion stage.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So I bet you got some good stories. I mean, there's got to be good stories that come out of that, of fighting, but it's unfortunate, right? You never want to see a marriage turn into divorce. Was it 50% now in San Diego? 60%, something like that?
That's what they say. And it's a challenge in terms of, especially financially, because once you start down that path and you have two households that you have to pay for, it's always more expensive than one. And so definitely not something you want to do. If you can avoid it, that's the best advice.
So yeah, let's get into some advice here. Like, so you're advising people whether they're getting divorced, whether they're married as well. What is some good financial advice to married couples?
Well, I think first of all, the people need to be open and honest about relationships going into a marriage. They need to be transparent. They need to know what's going on. What are you coming in with? What's the financial baggage? How do you feel about money? What are your values? What are your goals is critical. And then inside of a relationship, defining some roles, like, well, what's our budget, or who's going to pay the bills, so people know and play to their strengths, and so people know how to operate within their own financial household.
Now, Scott, on your end, do you find that once it gets to you that some of those things didn't happen? I mean, is that
almost in
come
every
to surface?
single divorce, that's what happens. So I'll get a spouse that'll come in and say, the other spouse was the one that took care of all the finances. So I have zero idea what's going on with our bank accounts, our investments. I don't even know what the other person makes, which is a total shock to me.
Which basically means, how do we settle this thing?
Yeah, so that's the next step, except you don't know what you have, or you don't know what you don't have. Maybe it's all credit card debt. And so then we have to figure out, go through the discovery process, which is an expensive endeavor in and of itself, to find out that information, and then try to start splitting up debt.
Well, we talk a lot about real estate on this show. So that's a big component of this. Not only the home and the memories you built in your family, but the equity in the home. Are you going to sell the home? Are you going to refinance, buy the other person out? Can you give any advice on that front?
Yeah, so in any divorce, if two households cost more than one, we're gonna have to figure out what to do with the family residence. 9 out of 10 times, either spouse is not going to be able to afford that family residence because there just isn't enough money.
Yep.
So there's got to either be a refinance, buying the other spouse out,
Right.
or there's going to have to be some sort of an assumption of the loan. Typically, the mortgage companies are not doing very many assumptions anymore. So
Can't
we're
imagine,
selling the
yeah.
house. That means that the children are displaced, that both parents are going to have to move into separate residences. They may not be able to afford to buy them, so you're going to have to rent. And so that's one of the downsides to any divorce.
Real estate's a big one. Again,
Huge.
as we sit here and talk about numbers, you got to also remember that a lot of memories get built into that house. So, I mean, earlier when I said I bet you have a lot of stories, I know they're probably very troubling stories, but I can only imagine you're moving kids out of school districts, things like that. It's challenging. So, Matt, with advice moving forward for families, we have families that watch this show. Someone wants to sit down with you. How do you help kind of bring these things together?
Well, I think, as Scott alluded to, people don't know what's going on. We want to bring this
figure
stuff
that
to the
out.
light. I mean, we want to shine a light on people's finances and get clear. And I think clarity brings good communication. It brings good conversation. It brings leading a healthy life by having clarity around what you have and where you want to go. And if you can open that up communication-wise, you can prevent a lot of these financial hardships and emotional issues that come up inside families.
So if someone were to reach out, go to your website, illuminationwealth.com, and they say, hey, look, I have some questions, or we want to get a little bit more transparent. When you sit down with someone, what are some of the things you're looking for? Is there like a checklist of items that you get into? Is it addressing the debt first? I mean, where do we start?
Yeah, I think a big picture is just how people feel differently about money in the different areas of their life, whether it is how they manage their finances, whether they feel like they have enough to meet their day-to-day needs, or what are their fears, what are their aspirations. It's really just trying to understand not all the numbers up front, but how each of us as a couple feels about finance in all the different capacities.
Scott Finkbeiner, Wilkinson and Finkbeiner, thanks for coming on the show.
My
Family
pleasure.
law practitioner, first time we've had one on. Matt Rinke, always good to have you on. Like I said, it's good to have you on when the market's up, and market's doing really well. Illuminationwealth.com if you have questions on this stuff. The market's pretty fun to talk about, but when we can zero in and give you niche advice, then we're doing our job, and I'm doing my job as a consumer advocate. Thanks, Matt. Thanks,
you.
Scott. Appreciate you guys coming on.